Welcome to Coffee Chronicles. Here with a COVID impact video for you today. Airbnb is known and operates worldwide in over 220 countries and regions as a platform which people can rent their entire properties or individual rooms to guests. It has 6 million active listings as of December 2021, with over 1 billion guest arrivals since it started in 2007. The hospitality sector have been hit hard by the pandemic due to enforced travel bans and restrictions worldwide. So, what happened to Airbnb during this time? Let's first start with a general overview, taking a look at how the revenue and number of listings changed during this period. Here we have a plot of Airbnb's revenue from 2020 to 2021, split by quarter. You can clearly see that Airbnb has increased its revenue drastically from the second quarter of 2021, almost double compared to the same quarters in the previous year. This table shows the number of listings on Airbnb between 2013 and 2021. You can see that the number of listings was increasing each year between 2013 to 2019. That's 7 million listings. However, in 2020, the number of listings decreased to 5.6 million, just below the amount of listings in 2018. In 2021, we can see the number of listings increasing again back to 6 million, but it is still short 1 million from the amount of listings in 2019. This could be as hosts are changing to long-term rentals. Now, let's break this down year by year, starting with the figures for 2020. At the peak of the pandemic, in the second quarter of 2020, Airbnb's revenue was down 72% year over year, with a loss of $575.6 million compared to a loss of $297.4 million in the same period in 2019. In May, people started returning for local travel and remote work, with the number of stays and experiences stabilizing between July and September, although still down 28% year over year. By the fourth quarter of 2020, revenue was only down 22% year over year, leading to a decrease in revenue by 30% for 2020 compared to 2019. To note, net income in 2020 was impacted by charges related to the IPO. So, let's now look into what Airbnb did during 2020 to tackle the COVID-19 impacts. Airbnb announced in March 2020 that COVID would fall into its extenuating circumstances policy, following the declaration by the World Health Organization that the COVID-19 outbreak was a global pandemic. This gave guests and hosts the option to cancel their bookings without charges and was extended to cover all bookings with a check-in date up to the 14th of April, as long as they were made on or before the 14th of March 2020. Additionally, in March, Airbnb had a hiring freeze, executive-level salary reduction by 50% for 6 months, as well as a pause on marketing. In April, Airbnb secured a $1 million investment, followed by another $1 billion loan days later. This was to ensure that Airbnb would be able to get through the impact of the pandemic, however long it lasted, and emerge even stronger. Airbnb launched an online experiences platform in April 2020. These included a range of activities, ranging from meditation with sheep, to coffee fortune reading, to goal setting with an Olympic gold medalist. In addition to this, they partnered with 4 organizations to help the aging population, allowing them to access the online experiences without any costs. As well as helping seniors, Airbnb has set aside $250 million to support hosts by paying 25% of what the host would have received under their cancellation policy. Although this might not be enough for many hosts, as it has been said that 50% of Airbnb hosts rely on the money from Airbnb to pay their rent or mortgage. Looking into how the COVID-19 shock was different to those previously, for example, by earthquakes, cyclones, or terrorist attacks, there were 3 differences. Firstly, the effect was global, with international tourist arrivals dropping by 20 to 30%. Secondly, the reductions to the economic growth were much larger than in previous shocks. Thirdly, the pandemic had the potential to trigger structural changes within the industry. In May 2020, Airbnb announced it was letting go of 1,900 employees, which was about a quarter of its workforce. In June 2020, Airbnb released a 5-step enhanced cleaning process. They had developed a cleaning protocol for hosts, along with leading experts in hospitality and medical hygiene. In addition to the protocol, they released a learning and certification program. Going forward, hosts either had to follow this protocol or alternatively could opt for a booking buffer with a required gap between guests. Interestingly, this ties into an investigation by a researcher in the University of Nevada, which found that occupancy increased by 16.5% for properties which were perceived to be clean, as well as an increase in income by 17.5%. Putting this into figures, it was found that on average, properties prior to COVID compared to properties during COVID had a 22% decrease in income of $167 per month. However, it was only a $35 decrease on average for properties which were perceived as clean. Airbnb Host Endowment launched in October 2020 to provide support to hosts. This was a $1 billion endowment for purposes including emergency funds, educational grants, as well as other support. In November 2020, Airbnb filed for an initial public offering. It had initially planned for the IPO earlier that year, but was delayed due to the pandemic. According to the IPO filing, revenue had declined by 72%. Let's now look into the figures for 2021. Airbnb generated a 73% year-on-year increase in revenue of $5.9 billion. Comparing the number of bookings made on Airbnb in 2020 to 2021, there was a 55% increase, bringing the number to 300 million bookings. In addition to this, key business insights were found. Non-urban travel has grown, with guests discovering thousands of small towns in rural communities, although they are also returning to cities. Despite the variance and possible surges, guests are planning more travel. Guests are booking longer stays, with long-term stays of over 28 nights being the fastest growing category by trip length. Airbnb has been upgrading its platform throughout 2021 to support the new way of traveling. Let's now look into some things that Airbnb said during 2021. In January 2021, Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky said, "Travel is never going back to the way it was before the pandemic. It doesn't mean that travel is not coming back. It's just not coming back the way it was." He made 3 predictions on how travel will change, including more people will conduct business meetings virtually, leading to more travel for leisure and less for work. People will consider smaller communities, including rural areas and farm stays, mixing the travelling between popular tourist locations and these smaller communities. People will want to spend more quality time and less time sightseeing, as guests want to visit friends and family. In May 2021, Airbnb no longer considers COVID cancellations as unforeseen in its refund policy. In its most recent shareholder letter, Airbnb gave 4 main reasons why the platform is thriving once again. Rural travel is popular, shown by urban travel increasing by 45% between 2019 to 2021. City travel is making a comeback, with US cities' gross night bookings up in 2021 compared to the same period in 2019. Omicron didn't affect bookings as much as the other variants. Long stays are increasing, highlighted in the first quarter of 2021, where Airbnb stated that a quarter of its bookings came from month-long stays, compared to only 14% of bookings in 2019. There's not yet any information on 2022 figures for Airbnb, but let's look into the support program they have added. In January 2022, Airbnb announced a guest COVID support program, whereby guests could make a request for relief if a booking had to be cancelled. They have provided $20 million to the program, which is due to end on the 30th of April 2022, or earlier if the funds have all been allocated. This option was available to bookings with a check-in date on or after the 1st of December 2021, cancelled by the guest due to a qualifying government-mandated travel restriction. This provided the guest with a travel coupon for 50% of the unrefunded portion of the reservation. For example, if a guest cancelled a $600 reservation, and the host refunded $300 under the host's cancellation policy, the guest would then receive a travel coupon worth $150. However, certain things weren't included, like work bookings or experiences. So, what does the future look like for the industry? And have people's attitudes towards travel really changed as Airbnb believes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will leave you with a quote. According to the founders, a crisis brings you clarity about what is truly important. You become thankful not only for what you have in your life, but for who you have in your life. We are thankful for everyone who stuck by us during our darkest hours. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more of these impact stories in the future.